All right, today we are going to be talking about multiple step equations. And we're going to start with just using the distributive property and combining like terms today. And then tomorrow you are going to be talking about how to solve equations when there are variables on both sides of the equal sign. So we have already done two-step equations, right, where we only have two steps. We either add or subtract something over to the other side, and then we either multiply or divide that last step. Today, we're going to talk about, well, what happens when we have other situations that show up, like the distributive property combining like terms, because then we end up with multiple steps to solving for our variables. So on your notes, I would write these 5 steps down, right? And these are the steps that I kind of go through when I'm solving a multiple step equation. Other teachers might recommend doing different things or whatever it may be, but I like having a step-by-step process and just something that I can kind of check off in my brain as I'm going through multiple step equations. So the first thing that you should do whenever you're solving an equation is you should look to see if there's a distributive property available, right? And that's really anytime you have parentheses going on, right? And you want to complete the distributive property to get rid of those parentheses, right? And that's what we're going to be working on today. Right, then step 2, after you've done the distributive property, or maybe there's not any distributive property, then you're going to look to see, can you combine any like terms on either side of the equal sign? Sometimes you'll be able to combine some numbers, sometimes you might not be able to. Right? Tomorrow we're going to talk about step 3, right? And that's when, are there variables on both sides of the equal sign? Can we move the variables to that same side? Okay, so we are going to talk about steps 1 and 2 today, and then we kind of go right into step 4 from there, and that would be then a 2-step equation. So after you've done those first 3 steps and kind of checked them off, right, then you look here and you have then a 2-step equation going on. Okay, so this is just the regular 2-step equation solving. Okay, so that's what we did at the beginning of this year. So take a minute to write these down. You can pause the video if you need to. All right, just a reminder about what the distributive property is if some of you forgotten. Okay, the distributive property is when we have parentheses here with a number out in front, okay, or a variable out in front. We take that number and we multiply it by that first term. So we get 4x, because 4 times x is 4x. And then we also multiply that number out in front by the second term, 4 times 3, and that's where we get our 12. Okay, so that's how we are going to be doing the distributive property today. Okay, so if you needed a reminder, you could write this down. All right, first things first, we're going to go through a couple with solving for the distributive property, then we'll go through some with combining like terms, and then we will go through a couple kind of mixed review. Okay, first things first, that's step 1 in our process, if you remember, was look for the distributive property. Okay, well, I see parentheses and I see a number out in front, so I am going to be completing the distributive property. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this as 6x plus 8 equals 35. Okay, I did 2 times 3x, which is 6x, 2 times 4, which is 8. Next, okay, I haven't done step 2 or step 3 yet. I haven't shown you. So now we go on to step 4, which is just a 2-step equation from here. And hopefully you recognize this. Okay, so we are first going to subtract 8 from both sides. So I'm left with just 6x over here. And then I have 27 over on my right-hand side. The last step is going to be dividing by 6 to cancel that out. So I get x is equal to 27 divided by 6 is 4.5. Right, when you are solving equations, you should always have all of your work shown. Okay, so exactly what I have up on the board, this is the expectation for you. Next example. Again, first step, we're going to do the distributive property. I notice there are parentheses, so I'm going to rewrite this with the distributive property completed. So I still have this negative 6 over here. 3 times 2z is 6z, and then plus 24, because 3 times 8 is 24. Then it's just a two-step equation from here. All of you are very capable of solving from this point. Okay, so then we subtract 24, so we get negative 30 equals 6z. Then I'm going to divide by 6 to get rid of the 6 over here. So I get negative 5 for my z value. And make sure you're pausing the video when you need to so you can take the notes that you need. Last one with the distributive property. I notice I have a negative out in front, and those of you who remember when there's not a number out in front, it actually means negative 1. Okay, so I'm going to take that negative 1 and multiply it by both terms here. Negative 1 times 2n, I get negative 2n. Negative 1 times negative 8, I get positive 8 equals negative 2. Notice that it's now a two-step equation. So I am going to solve minus 8, minus 8. So I get negative 2n equals negative 10. Final step is I'm going to divide by negative 2. Right? A lot of times people forget about the negative with the 2. Always bring it with you. So I get n is equal to positive 5 because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. And always check your calculator if you are unsure when you are adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing integers. Next, notice we are moving into combining like terms. Okay, I'm still going to follow my steps. Step 1 was the distributive property. I notice that there are no parentheses, so I can skip step number 1, and I can move on to that step 2, which is combining like terms. Okay? And I can only combine like terms that are on the same side of the equal sign. So I'm going to start with the left side. Right? And I notice 6 and negative 2x are like terms because they both have an x on it. So I can combine those to be 4x, because 6x minus 2x is 4x. Okay, the 11 can't be combined, so I'm just going to say plus 11. Then I look on the right-hand side of the equal sign, and there's just a negative 5. So obviously nothing can be combined, so I just leave the negative 5 there. So all I did was combine the like terms that are needed, and now hopefully you notice that it is a two-step equation. I'm going to subtract 11. So I'm left with just 4x over here equals negative 5 minus 11. Again, check your calculator if you're not sure. We get negative 16. Last step, divide by positive 4, divide by 4. So we get that canceled, and x ends up being negative 4, because negative 16 divided by a positive 4 is negative 4. Make sure you're pausing the video and taking down these notes so you have them for the test or quiz. Next, very similar problem here. Okay, I have a couple variables that can be combined. Okay, notice that I didn't have the distributive property, so I just jumped right into combining like terms. So I can combine 4x plus 3x to get me 7x. Okay, the 5 can't be combined with anything because there's no like terms on that side. And the 47 stays because, again, there's nothing over there for it to combine with. It is a two-step equation. Okay, so I'm going to subtract 5. So I get 7x is equal to 42. Okay, and then my very last step is I'm going to divide by 7. Divide by 7. So I get x is equal to 6. All right, now we are going into some mixed review. Okay, so we're going to go through our steps here. Step 1, is there the distributive property? Hopefully you said yes because you see parentheses. So I'm going to take this 3 and I'm going to multiply it by both the x and the -4. So I'm going to leave my 5x where it's at. I'm going to multiply the 3 out in front here times x, so I get 3x. And then I'm going to multiply that 3 by the -4, so I get -12, because 3 times -4 is -12. And this would be a great problem to have written down in your notes. Okay, so I did the distributive property. Okay, and now I'm going to combine like terms. Okay, so here I have the 5x and the 3x. So I'm going to combine that to 8x, because 5 plus 3 is 8. I still have my -12 because that can't be combined with anything. And the 60 can't be combined with anything either. All my variables, my x, is all to the same side. There's nothing over on the right-hand side of the equal sign. So I'm going to just go into my two-step equation. Okay, so I'm going to add 12, so I get 8x is equal to 72. And when I divide 8 by 72, cancels, I get x is equal to 9. Okay, again, this would be a great one to have in your notes. So take a minute and write it down. Next. Okay, I'm going to start with the distributive property because I see I have parentheses with this number out in front. So I'm going to take that 8 and multiply it by both terms. So I get 8x minus 16 for that first part. I still have this plus 3x, and I still have the 61. Next, I'm going to combine like terms. That's step 2. 8x plus 3x is 11x. I still have that minus 16, and I have the 61. Next, it's a two-step equation. I'm going to add 16, so I get 11x equals 77, because 61 plus 16 is 77. Divide by 11, so x ends up being 7. Another good one to have written in your notes. Right? I would even write in these arrows that I have up top here with the distributive property, right? Because those are helpful when you're looking back on your notes. Right? And if you want, you can use different colors, just like how I have been.